Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the T+A Caruso R, a compact little powerhouse that looks like it belongs in the office of Harvey Specter. Now this has an MSRP of $4,275, which is obviously beyond the reach of some people's audiophile journeys out there, but in more of the endgame high-end audiophile space, this is kind of on the lower side of things. And in T+A's entire product stack, this is on the entry-level side of pricing compared to some of their flagship products. Now, the Caruso name comes from the Italian operatic tenor Enrico Caruso. Maybe you've heard of the song O Sole Mio. I know I heard it a lot growing up because that was like one of my dad's jams. And let me tell you something. My dad is no Enrico Caruso. Now, before I get any further, though, I do want to disclose the fact that T+A did send this to me for review. It won't affect what I say about it. I have no financial kickbacks from them. I don't charge to make videos. I never want money to be a factor. And I also don't use affiliate links in the description for this. And this will be sent back. So I have no financial gain. I just wanted to cover a product like this because, frankly, several years ago, when I attended my first AXPONA, which is a huge audio show in Chicago, and it's actually coming up in April 10th, I think it was, of this year. So I'll have a link in the description below for the show. It's a huge audiophile show, and I go through, I don't know, 100 plus rooms, whatever you have time for, to listen to different products. I fell in love with a lot of the T+A components. So some of this came from a byproduct of hearing things in a show first and then asking if I could cover it later, because there are certain things that stand out for their own unique reasons. There's plenty of good gear out there, but that's where the relationship from T+A kicked off. So what is the Caruso R? Well, this is considered to be like an all-in-one audio solution, almost, because the R is basically the receiver, and then they have another system called the Caruso All-in-One that's a tad more at $4,450. It looks the same as this, it's just a little bit taller because it has actually built-in speakers. There's speakers on the sides with a woofer on the bottom of the unit to help with bass duties. That's more in line for like a luxury office or studio, whatever you're using it for. If you want an all-in-one unit that sounds really nice, it can be used for that, and that still has its own amplifier output. That's why it's just a little bit more, because it's not just designed to be an all-in-one with lower power. This guy forgoes the built-in speakers for a more compact chassis. It's basically smaller than a 12-inch cube. It's only just over 8 inches tall and just under 12 inches wide and deep. So it's really compact, and it actually doesn't weigh much either at about 17 pounds. So what's cool about the Caruso R is the goal of being a truly all-in-one unit. It has a lot of power output, and then it also supports CD player. It has multiple inputs on the back, and the big kicker with this is how much it embraces streaming audio. I'm going to get into all that later, but I think where this ties in is you can use this as a standalone system in your living room. So if you don't want like a full surround sound and you do a mix of dual duty, let's say you listen to or watch some TV shows during the day and you can just have this connected to your television with an optical cable, but then you spend a lot of your time also listening to music, and maybe you just don't want to see a huge stack of audio components and you still want good audio component sound. That's where something like the Caruso comes in. I think some of the other use cases though are where it would be more popular, and that's if you already have a dedicated system that's kind of high end, but you want a listening room, you know, something that's more casual where your guests come in, but you want something sleek, especially as a secondary system. You don't typically want multiple rooms with racks of equipment. This can sit really nice on a tabletop, and then you can use 2 speakers of your choice. I personally use it in my studio as a listening system during the day because it's a sleek unit. I don't have to power up a bunch of stuff, and it's really convenient being able to cast audio from your mobile device like a phone or a tablet directly into your high-end sound system. Now that helps tie in something else T+A sent me, and that is the Caruso S10 loudspeaker. It's a floor-standing speaker rated for a decent amount of power as well, and it's also encapsulated in the same type of aluminum top to bottom of this. I found out after it was sent to me for review that they actually discontinued the S10s. You can still get them. I found a local, or somewhat local, audio distributor on the West Coast called Upscale Audio. I'm sure you can get it at a bunch of other authorized distributors, but I will have a link in the description below in case you want to check out the speakers. Those speakers are fantastic, and just to get right to it, before I even finished this review and filmed it, I liked them so much I asked if I could buy them to keep them right off the bat. It was one of the fastest speaker purchases I made once I heard it because of a couple of reasons. Aesthetics are a huge part of audio, and whether we lie to ourselves and sell us they're not. I know some people buy stuff purely for audio performance, but it really does have to look good in your living space. And this type of design language, the black aluminum, the really clean square designs, the aluminum top plate, all of this stuff has a really modern, sleek look, but it still looks high-end. You can have something that looks modern and simple, but still high-end. It doesn't have to be overly flashy or ornate, things like that. But then on top of it, the S10's audio performance was absolutely incredible. It dug all the way down to 30 hertz. It has just a slight touch of warmth, but the bass emphasis is on the lower notes. The mid-range is just a little bit relaxed, and then they add a little bit of sparkle into the mid-treble, which helps kind of wake things up. It's almost like everything you listen to has just a little bit more energy to it than what would be a reference sound. Now, this video obviously wasn't intended to be a speaker review, but it is worth noting how amazing those speakers are, and that is originally what pulled me into the T+A sound, because I heard their higher-end speakers at AXPONA. The Caruso is kind of like, you know, the gateway drug, if you will, to their high-end audio products. So keep that in mind. If you ever go to AXPONA, check out the T+A room to listen to it, or go to your local audio place that carries T+A products. See if you can get a demo of them, because they do have their own kind of unique house sound. But what I like about T+A is they're not like chasing perfectly flat reference, but they're not going so colored and extreme to make everything so magical that it ruins the tonality of what your expectations are for how music should sound. It's kind of like a tastefully done, more excited, more enveloping sound, and to me it was just a great combo. God help me and my wallet if they ever send me their higher end speakers, but for now I am super happy with the S10. So let's focus back on the Caruso R, which again has the same design language as the floor speakers that I really liked. Now the touchscreen is an LCD touchscreen, so it doesn't have the same deep black levels that we're kind of spoiled with cell phones these days. For an audio product, that's fine, but there is a little bit of a gray lift if you're looking at the all black image. The touchscreen is relatively fast, and the overall user interface is pretty intuitive. Even, you know, with a lot of products, I try to just straight up use them without reading the manual first, which I know is going to be like a hot debate anyway, but some of the reasons why I do that is I want to see how intuitive the user interface is first, just to see how easy it is to pick up. Obviously the manuals are there to help explain how to use everything, but this is intuitively laid out. The icons make sense. The settings wheel is, of course, to access settings. There's an eject button for the CD player. Volume has an up and down arrow. So there's like real basic stuff here that you would expect. Overall, it's pretty snappy. Everything that I clicked on loaded fast, but the smoothness of adjusting sliders, for example, is a little bit choppy. It's not like a perfect smooth drag slider, if you will. It kind of jumps as you go. So it's not perfect, but for what it's intended to do, it's fine. I think what's hard nowadays is when you look at this user interface, it looks clean, it looks modern, it's easy to navigate, but we're kind of spoiled by the whole, you know, app culture, if you will, and everything is tied into smartphones and apps, and graphics have improved. All of these experiences have kind of set a really high bar for user interaction. And audio products typically aren't at that level. It's not like specific to the Caruso, but it's not going to feel like you're using a state-of-the-art mobile app when you're navigating this screen. Again, the good news is it does what it's supposed to, and it's relatively easy to navigate. Just don't expect, you know, because of the price point, a very futuristic UI. It is tied into more of a classic approach. Another part that's kind of unassuming are 3 tiny little holes on top of the Caruso R, because it is a beamforming microphone array for Amazon Alexa. So it does support the voice assistant, and once you tie it into your network, it basically just gives you a little code. You sign into your Amazon account on your computer. You can then use your Caruso to interact and control your smart home in addition to your music. A big focus with the Caruso R is the wireless music support, what you can do with a phone or a tablet. Now this also supports Apple AirPlay, so if you want to cast from your phone, even if you don't use all the other apps, or maybe someone in your household doesn't want to go through the whole setup and understanding how to use everything, you can still conveniently select this as an AirPlay target. So it makes it very easy to listen to anything from your mobile device, and obviously that includes a tablet. This also supports aptX, so if you just want to use a Bluetooth connection, you can do that. The big kicker is how streaming works. So this does support Spotify Connect, so if you're in Spotify, you can select the Caruso R as your speaker. On Tidal Connect, you cannot. You have to use the app from T+A, which is the Caruso app as well. The app, just like the user interface, works well, it's clean, but it looks kind of basic at surface level. Once you start understanding how the controls are kind of remapped, think of this app as like a wrapper for Tidal. You can navigate all of your existing playlists the same. You can browse new recommended music. You can even search for music, and you could still add and manage your playlists through the Caruso app. So it doesn't look as intuitive. I prefer to use the Tidal app myself because I'm much faster with it, but it doesn't take long to start figuring out how to interact with it. And that is what you would use if you're chasing like the best possible audio quality from something like Tidal. You can connect to countless other apps. It supports Qobuz. Again, I said it supports Spotify. So you can integrate a lot of your audio sources into it. There's just different ways to control it, whether you want to use the native apps as AirPlay or Connect where compatible, or if you want to use the T+A app for your full source. In addition to being able to use the app to control and select all of your music playback, you of course can adjust the volume via the app. And then the app also allows you to dial in like your settings and audio controls, because this does have tone controls and other features to customize the sound, which brings me into sound quality. Now, I was fortunate enough to review a product last year called the Neo Hippo ET30. It's a selector box that has no impact on sound quality, both measured and perceivable. It allows you to toggle between 2 amplifiers and 2 speakers, so it's really easy and fast, and even has a remote, so I could sit in my main listening position and toggle between multiple sources or multiple speakers for outputs. That really helps when I'm doing reviews, because I can compare it to many other audio products I own and kind of tie everything in. And this is, so just to give you an example of what I was comparing it to, I've been using the Yamaha R, the N800A, which is an integrated amp with a network streamer, and a PS Audio Stellar Strata, the Mark I, which I purchased about a year and a half ago. If everything is set to flat, tone defeat, etc., they all have a similar power envelope, and they all sound very similar. It's not too easy to pick up the difference, which is kind of cool because the form factors on all 3 are completely different, even though the power output is comparable. This little guy is unassuming. It's not huge, but it really gets loud, and the bass delivery is there when you want it to be. It's not like the power supply is starving your speakers of a strong bass note, even on a larger tower speaker like the S10. What really sets the Caruso R apart from some of the other products, though, that I talked about is the ability to adjust sound even beyond tone control. The Stellar Strata has no audio control whatsoever as far as customizing the sound. It's a pure direct sound profile, which the audiophile purists would probably love. And you can do that with this. You can also do the same with the Yamaha. The Yamaha has additional features like time correction for room treatment, but it does alter the frequency response a little bit. And in some cases, I actually did not like the sound performance change when I used their auto-calibrated stuff. Yamaha still has loudness EQ, and there's bass knobs on the front, which I love for like quick adjustment of bass and treble. The Caruso R adds a mid slider, so it's not just bass and treble, but you can even adjust your mid-range, which is going to help with vocals and certain instruments. It's not even just for the track. You might have a speaker that will benefit from some kind of looser grain adjustments, such as the bass, mids, and highs, to tailor it to your own speaker, room, or whatever track you're listening to. To take things a step further, this too has loudness control, which I did measure the frequency response of this. Loudness EQ is a hotly contested topic, I think, by some people because of how it changes the sound. There's something called the Fletcher-Munson curve, which we kind of perceive audio frequencies differently based off amplitude. So if you're listening to music at a lower volume and everything's flat, it doesn't sound that exciting. You don't have the same kind of bass and treble, and it sounds more mid-focused. And then as you crank it, the volume impact or your perception of your bass and your highs changes. So what happens with loudness EQ is at a lower volume, it boosts bass and it boosts treble. So it sounds more impactful and more engaging even at a lower volume, which in a lot of cases makes the music more enjoyable. I did measure my room with the Caruso S10. Now this room isn't perfectly treated for speakers. It's more for like my talking head. I pointed to the right because I have GIK panels to my right to help with reflections in this spot that I'm talking to you on. So when you look at the frequency response of the S10, the biggest thing I want to highlight here is the S10s do dig down to 30 hertz quite well. It's like really strong. And when you enable loudness EQ, you can see a lift in the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies. As you turn it up, it'll kind of flatten a little bit. So think of it as more of a dynamic EQ. Thankfully, if you don't care for that kind of a lift or your speakers can't handle that much of a bass lift, you can always disable loudness EQ just fine. Now there are 2 special sliders on the Caruso R though that to me kind of really make this special in terms of sound adjustment and control, because it's for personal preference and speakers. There's a slider called Contour Presence and Contour Fundamental. Presence is your presence region. It's going to help boost some of the upper mid-range vocals. It just helps your upper mid sound more forward and it stands out in the mix. It can help with guitars. It can help with stuff that sounds too relaxed, or maybe you're having a difficult time understanding all of the dialogue you're hearing. That'll kind of help push that up. The Fundamental is a really amazing slider. These aren't like massive adjustments. I think it goes up to +3 or something, and then negative. But if you need to add a little bit of warmth, whether it's to your speaker because the room's sucking it out, the speakers don't have enough warmth, maybe they sound cold and sterile, you can increase the fundamental a little bit and add some of the warmth in without like drastically coloring the sound. Now, if your speakers already have a lot of warmth, or maybe the cabinet or your room has a weird resonance going on, which can create kind of like a boxiness to it, when you hear low frequency, like low mids, upper bass resonances, it's really not pleasant. And if that becomes an issue in your room, you can take the fundamental slider and actually reduce it by a couple decibels, and it can help fix resonances. This is where some of the magic of the Caruso R happens. There are countless streaming products out there. There's countless amplifiers out there, but there are not a lot of good solutions in mass market to easily adjust your sound, to tailor it to your personal preferences, your speaker pairing to the amp, the speaker pairing to the room, how you hear things, etc. These are the things that can make a good system great, in addition to sound treatment, proper placement, etc. So it's really worth focusing on that, because I've reviewed and used so many audio products over the years, and the thing that kills it on certain products is not being able to fix a couple nuanced issues with it without relying on a standalone parametric EQ box or DSP, like a digital signal processing box from Mini DSP, to kind of fine tune the sound. A lot of audio solutions don't give you that. And yeah, room treatment's great. Purists will want direct sound, but for people who just want a quick fix to kind of dial in what they like, this is such a killer feature. The power output is more than adequate for speakers like the S10, as long as your room is, reasonably sized. When I say reasonable, like my office is, I think, 20 by 22 or something like that. This gets more than loud for this room. It will get uncomfortable for me if I go much louder. In my larger living room, which has a higher ceiling, if you have really big speakers, then yeah, you could obviously send them more power. But the goal of this is to be more of that streamlined all-in-one solution. Part of what you're paying for is all those controls and features and the streaming capability, but the power is there. You're paying a lot for a product like this, so naturally it has to perform. The other thing that's important is things like the noise floor and changing tracks. There's no hiss. It's a dead quiet amp, so if you turn it up extremely loud and hit pause, maybe you're listening to classical music, which has a pretty wide dynamic range, you don't want to be distracted by hiss that this adds. Obviously, old recordings might have that, but this isn't bringing any of that into the mix. And then the other one is if you're changing tracks, whether it's CD or streaming, there's no pops or ticks or anything that takes away from that, luxury listening experience. And that's to be expected, right? You're paying $4,000 and up for a product like this. That stuff has to be like perfect. And it seems obvious to state, but if this had those issues, I would really jump down on that path, because there are less expensive products out there that have the same performance when it comes to noise floor and overall audio listening experience, like no pops. So I'm glad that you're not losing out on certain key performance metrics that are important for a product like this, because that's the stuff you hear and interact with every single day. The only real critiques I kind of had with the performance is just that the UI, again, felt a little bit dated. It's in line with a lot of other, high-end audiophile products out there that I've tested. I've used stuff from Cambridge Audio, PS Audio, and Yamaha for the streaming side of things. And this is very comparable to all of those. It looks a little bit more basic than some, like the graphics aren't as rich, but the actual usability, what people would really use it for, is one of the easiest to use out of all of them, and it's very stable and reliable. I've never had it not work once I've set it up. The remote control is also pretty straightforward as well. I like the layout. It's comfortable. This is a piece of aluminum. The battery is internal and it's rechargeable, which is awesome, but it uses micro USB. It's a little bit older charging port. I wish they updated this to USB-C. There are some good things I like about here. The only thing that I submitted feedback for is if I'm sitting on my couch and listening to music and I adjust the volume, that little volume readout on the bottom left of the UI doesn't go to the full screen. So I don't always have a frame of reference for how loud my volume is set if I'm not right up in the screen and being able to read it. Obviously, if you're using your phone or your tablet to play your music, you can adjust your volume there and you see it very cleanly on the bottom. But sometimes, especially if I'm listening to a CD or another source, I just want to adjust the volume through the remote because songs change in volume. I would have liked to have more of a frame of reference for that. It's a quick little suggestion. If they end up adding it, great, but that was the only real criticism I guess I had with the remote experience. Now the back of the Caruso R is loaded with connectivity, and the only thing I found lacking was any form of balanced connection. And considering what the Caruso R is intended to be, that's kind of to be expected. It does, however, have optical, coaxial, 2 analog inputs, and an analog output to work as your preamp out. It does have a headphone amp on the back as well. It's not super powerful. It's really designed for lighter and easier to drive headphones in my opinion, but it is a variable output. And then it even has a subwoofer output because there's on-screen controls to adjust your subwoofer gain level and crossover in case you want to get a little bit easier control in the box without having to reach behind your sub to change those settings yourself. Being that this is a network streamer, naturally internet connectivity is going to be important, and this has dual RJ45 Ethernet jacks on the back and removable antennas to help support the Bluetooth and network connectivity. These are removable, but I think what I did was I just never had to poke them up. If you don't like seeing the antennas sticking up over the unit, this does help with wireless stability and performance, but depending on your network and how far you are with Bluetooth, I actually just rotated mine to be hidden. I thought it looked more sleek, and I still had no issues maintaining a stable connection for Wi-Fi and casting from my phone with Bluetooth. Two other inputs that are a little bit older, but I'm glad they have, is the CD slot in the front, which supports rewritable discs, and it uses Grace Note for the back end for retrieving track data. So if you have a CD and you put it in, it's not just going to say CD track 1. It'll actually pull album art and the track name, which is a nice bridge from the older analog methods of listening to music and then modern day streaming. It helps modernize it a little bit. This also has radio support, so internet radio, which is what I typically use, and on the FM radio side, you have HD radio for North America and DAB+ in Europe. Now, if you want to add a little bit of color to your life, even though this has a clean aesthetic on its own, it does have an ambient light system built into the bottom, and that does allow you to adjust the colors. It's not like you have 16.7 million colors to choose from. There are only a handful of selection of colors, but it does allow you to provide a unique look to it, and you can adjust the brightness or disable it entirely. So in closing, I know the Caruso R is a niche product. It's a flagship price of over $4,000 for a lot of people, and it's not as feature rich as like a multi-channel surround sound receiver system. And it doesn't have the same power as a dedicated stack of amps and preamp if you're just looking for super powerful 2-channel exclusively. There are a lot of products out there, and this is the goal of this video, is to help you understand what this is intended for and how well they execute in that regard. And for how I listen to music every day, this is more of a product for people like me. I don't always have my TV on. I just like to set something up on my phone. The speaker system is kind of behind me sometimes, even when I work at my desk. It just depends where I'm working. So just filling the room with good music that's convenient is great. And obviously there's a lot of solutions out there. What really set the Caruso R apart for me from other products I've been using are all the slider and tone adjustments and those 2 contour sliders, like the presence and the fundamental. That might be a cop-out for some, and for purists, you want everything to be, left alone. But at the end of the day, having proper synergy of your entire system, that includes your ears, your music, and your room, tied into your amp and dialed into your personal preferences, that's really what takes it just that final extra step to becoming close to perfect. And this is where the Caruso R just absolutely killed it. And to quickly summarize, by sending this back, I'm kind of downgrading my system a little bit, which is a bummer because all of those dials really helped make my system close to perfect, and losing that without adding additional components for audio processing, it's inconvenient. Part of what you're paying for is the convenience. So if you want to hear something like this, again, find it at your local dealer, or maybe you learned enough from this review to just straight up blind buy it, and now you know it's the right product for you. And then you can also go to places like AXPONA, which is in Chicago. That's coming up soon. I'll have a link in the description for that. And you can hear and interact with multiple T+A audio products, as well as many other brands, to kind of compare it all. So thank you so much for watching and making it to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.